What's up, everybody? My name's Adam McDormand, and today we're going to talk about writing essays. And in particular, we're going to talk about how to approach writing a multi-paragraph essay. And so I've put together a formula that should be most likely somewhat familiar to you, but we're going to review it in this video just to make sure that we're all on the same page about how to go about writing a really strong essay. So this right here is the document that I put together outlining all the different pieces of a really strong multi-paragraph essay response. It looks like a lot, but really at the core it is very simple. It's all about having a strong introduction, having a well-considered and well-structured body paragraph, and then ending with a strong conclusion. Let's talk about introduction paragraphs first. Now, one of the things that is fairly common among students coming into their junior year is a reliance on attention grabbers, on some sort of humorous or interesting or controversial statement, sometimes a quote or a fact. And what I'm here to tell you today is that you are not going to do that anymore. Do not do this in academic writing. This is a breakup of sorts. It's not you, it's me. We've all outgrown this attention grabber concept, and it's time to move on. So, bye. Instead, what we're going to lead with every time we write an essay is context. And think about it like this. If you're handing your paper off to someone to read it, you need to make sure that they have enough information to understand what point you're trying to make when you get around to making your main claim. So ask yourself, what information does the reader need to know in order to understand your claim? This should include introducing the topic itself, providing some background information, and or briefly summarizing the materials, the texts that you've used to put together your argument. But you want to make sure that you're concise. Your introduction paragraph should not be hundreds of words long, at least not at this level. The types of topics that we'll be dealing with, you should be able to introduce your topic in 2, 3, maybe 4 sentences before you can go on and actually make your claim. The easiest way to think of a claim is as a sort of opinion that you're presenting as fact, something that you believe is true and you want to convince your reader. That means it needs to be something that is highly focused and narrows the scope of your topic rather than making it broad. It needs to be arguable, so not something obvious. You cannot write a strong claim about the sky being blue. You just can't. There's no way to argue that. And thirdly, it should be strongly worded. Often that means you need to make sure that your claim sentence is built in active voice and that you have a action verb rather than a verb like is or are, any of those being verbs. This will help you write a really strong, punchy main claim that you can build the rest of your paper around. If you have a weak claim, you're going to find that it's very difficult to build a strong argument. And the last thing that's going to go in your introduction paragraph is your organizational statement. Now, this is a sentence or maybe 2 that previews the logical structure of your paper, because you want your reader to be able to follow the information or the argument that you're giving them and hopefully come to the same conclusion that you came to. Because ultimately, you're trying to get your reader to follow your thought process well enough to come to the same conclusion that you came to and either absorb the information that you're providing or accept the claim that you're making. For example, in a standard 5-paragraph essay, your organizational statement would have 3 subpoints. Sometimes we call these prongs. You would have 3 prongs, each of which corresponds to one of your 3 body paragraphs. There's a clarification that we need to make here as we're becoming more advanced writers and as we're writing about more complex topics. When we're writing about concepts that are fairly straightforward or simplistic in their structure, we can generally merge our claim and our organizational statement into a thesis statement. So when you hear the term thesis statement, you are hearing a single sentence that contains both a main claim and the organizational structure of the paper itself. When you're writing about more complex topics, it's very, very helpful to break the thesis statement into its two parts and have the claim be its own sentence and the organizational statement be its own sentence, simply for the purpose of making sure that you don't have a sentence that is so complex in its structure that your reader can't parse the individual pieces out and make sense of what you're actually saying. Think about your reader's ability to process or even hold in their head each of your points. You may be able to write an extraordinarily beautiful, complex sentence that has multiple parts to it that is technically correct, but that doesn't mean that it's very easy to understand what you're saying. And you want to make sure that you convey your information in a way that the reader can comprehend. So let's talk about the body paragraphs. You will have one body paragraph per subpoint, or prong if you want to call it that, and each of those will follow this structure. You'll begin with a topic sentence. That's kind of the secondary claim or the bit of information that you're providing about that subpoint or prong. And that, of course, will connect back to your introduction paragraph. Now, what follows after that is what I call the evidence cycle. And it's very, very simple. You have a piece of evidence, so that's supporting evidence from another textual source that you're going to use to support the claim you're making. And then explanation. So what does that evidence mean? How is it relevant to the topic at hand? It's very, very important as you guide the reader through your thought process that you don't just throw in a quote bomb and assume that the reader is going to be able to make sense of it and come to the same conclusions or absorb out of that information what's important in the same way that you did. You have to guide them through the process. So you'll provide a piece of evidence and you'll explain what it means and why it's relevant every time. And you need to do that at least 2 times per body paragraph. Otherwise, you're trying to build an argument for your subpoint around a single piece of evidence. And that's generally not going to fly. Not at the junior level, not at the senior level, certainly not beyond. So you need to make sure you complete that evidence cycle 2 times at the very least per body paragraph. And then you can finish off your body paragraph with a kind of connective or transition statement that links the paragraph back to your main claim and kind of helps you move on to the next point. So the question then is, what is the minimum number of sentences that you can have in a body paragraph if you're following this formula? Think about it. You have a topic sentence, a piece of evidence, the explanation, another piece of evidence, the explanation for that, and a closing or transition connection sentence. That's 6. That's if you're being really concise, and that's if each piece of evidence is only 1 sentence, or each explanation is only 1 sentence. And you may have a piece of evidence that is 2 or 3 sentences long, and an explanation that requires as many sentences in order to fully parse what that means and why it's relevant. So realistically, that 6-sentence body paragraph is a bare minimum. Most likely, you'll be building paragraphs that are longer than that, especially as you deal with complex topics. Once you finish that, that's one of your body paragraphs. You're actually going to repeat that formula or that part of the formula each time for each body paragraph or each subpoint from your claim. And once you finish that, then you can move on to your conclusion. And conclusion paragraphs are difficult. They're difficult for me. They're difficult for everyone. They're tricky. You still need to figure out what goes into one in order to write a strong conclusion, because you want to end well. If you don't, that can really undercut your argument. So for a conclusion paragraph, you want to restate your claim, but you want to word it differently. I have students sometimes copy their claim out of the introduction paragraph and paste it into the conclusion, and it doesn't work. It comes across as a shortcut, as maybe a little bit lazy, or just shows that you're not conversant enough in the topic to be able to word it in different ways or present that information from different angles, right? So you want to reword that claim and not simply just use a thesaurus and swap out words, but actually state it in a new way, if at all possible. Make sure that you don't add new information or change the nature of that claim itself. And I get it, that can be really difficult to totally reword a claim without fundamentally changing it. That's part of why conclusion paragraphs are so difficult. Then you'll want to include some type of summary statement where you sum up your subpoints or prongs. Again, not introducing any new information that wasn't in any of your body paragraphs. You can bring those things together, you can close them, right? But you don't want to add new information. Then lastly, that closing statement where you leave the reader with a final impression of your paper as a whole. Remember, that's the last thing that the reader is going to come away with, so you want to make sure that that is a strong concluding sentence. I know that was a lot of information in a fairly short period of time, but you have this video, you can go back and look at it whenever you need to, and of course you can ask me questions if you need help. The best thing that you can do is just commit to practicing this. Commit the evidence cycle, if nothing else, to your memory, and always use that to strengthen your arguments. And then you're ready to write your first assignment, whenever that happens to be. And that's going to do it for this video, guys. Until next time, good luck, have fun, what a time to be alive.